I think what we're really trying to go for is a starting point, because as it is now, the point that we start with is very one-sided. So when you can make or when you can start everything off where both parties have that equality, then it's easier to go from there if there are any circumstances that require it to be different. Um, like I said, yeah, some of my friends have uh, the regular possession, the standard possession, and that works for them because of certain circumstances that they have. But when you have the 50-50 as a starting point, it allows for equality on both sides, and it allows for uh, just better like arrangement.
Well,
Having
I think you've hit the nail on the head there in what you said. You said it's normal, so it felt completely normal. So you weren't in a scenario where you felt, oh, this is awkward. You know, I've got to walk around with like, this is my mum and this is my stepdad, and I've got to introduce them in a certain way or what have you. You know, if it that would be awkward, right? But you felt normal about it, and I think that answers. I think that answers the question quite. Yeah, really nicely, because I think that's exactly how everybody around you wants you to feel.
Yeah, because I said, well, I'm sorry, but it's gonna be all of my family or all of my parents. Uh, but in reality, that was just like you said, normal. I didn't really. There wasn't a big change if I was in just a regular like two-parent household or how I have four-parent. It was just my parents.
On a train, in a bus, in a car, on the way to your job. All alone with your kids, with your wife, or with your dog. You can listen anywhere, you can listen everywhere to the Philip Maloney podcast.
Hi, welcome back to the latest installment of the Philip Maloney podcast. I'm very pleased to be joined by Sarah and Jeremy Johnston. They're out of San Antonio, Texas, and they have been doing a lot of work in the family courts in regards to 50-50 parenting. I'm really pleased to have the younger generation and the more affected generation representing themselves here today in the form of Jeremy. And we'll get on and talk with him and his Belle-Mere, as he refers to her, which is stepmother. So thank you both for joining me today on the Philip Maloney podcast, and welcome.
Thanks. We're really glad to be able to make it today.
So an interesting time for you guys over the last few months. One of the things that I've been really intrigued about is Jeremy's involvement and Jeremy's participation in the conquest of shared parenting. But before we go on to you, Jeremy, perhaps Sarah, if you'd like to take us through an overview as to what you as a family have faced and what you're doing currently in your volunteer role.
So my husband is Jeremy's dad, and Jeremy's mom got divorced in 2005, and they wanted to do 50-50, but they were told by two lawyers here in Texas that you couldn't do 50-50 because we have what is considered a standard possession order, which is a detailed calendar in which it tells you what time you're going to pick up and what time you're going to drop off the kids. So they had to work that out themselves. Both of them are active duty in the United States Air Force. So we had to co-parent at a more extreme rate than maybe other people have to start out with, because when you're both going to deployments or you're both going TDY, which is temporary duty to other places, you have to rely on your co-parent a little bit more. Even when we got stationed in several different states, we still maintained a schedule with Jeremy where he might be at our house in Illinois for 1 month, and then he would come back to Texas and go to her house. So we did that until he started school. And then, of course, when you're two active duty households living in different states, you can't continue to do that. So he did live with her and her husband for several years. When he first started school, we were able to get stationed within a few hours of their house, where Heather, Jeremy's mom's work, opened a new office, she was able to transfer down. They got a house 2 miles from our house, and we went back to a self-selected 50-50 week on, week off schedule. It worked really well for us, but we still had some of those same conflicts that arise when you have a winner-loser system and you have an entire system, an entire group of people telling you that one person overpowers the other one, is ultimately the decision maker. So we decided to go back to court. We completely redid our paperwork. We went much further than even most of the legislation. We don't even have a custodial parent. So Jeremy has to stay in one geographic location. And if one of the parents move, they instantly become the non-custodial parent, because we just felt, after reviewing the times that we fought, that we were being pushed into fighting by the system.
So it sounds like you're completely out of control as the people, let's say, with parental responsibility for Jeremy, you know, so the people who are, you know, who want his best interests at heart, and who are going to deal with all the day-to-day stuff of being a family. So in a nutshell, you were finding it sort of almost ridiculous to have this scenario played before you in such a bureaucratic way that you have to tick a certain box in order to fulfill a certain stipulation that the government is effectively telling you how to parent.
Yes, and I think one of the real kickers were there were a couple of conversations that Jeremy's mom got pulled into that really were trashing, because everybody has this idea about stepmothers, particularly, that we're evil and we're wicked. And she walked away from a couple of those conversations and she was just like dumbfounded. She was like, I was sticking up for you because they were not wanting you involved. So we all have jobs. You know, I do a lot of volunteer work and I'm the lead on that for our family. But more so because my full-time job is a little more flexible on my schedule. So like his dad and I were the parents at school, the volunteers. So the parent teacher organization, the parent teacher association, the PTA here, we were the ones that joined that. And we did the booster clubs. I'm still a member of the booster club for the high school. So we really led that because her work schedule didn't allow for that kind of flexibility. So when people were pushing back on that and getting kind of hateful and ugly, she was just like, it hit her one day, like, this is dumb.
Yeah. So you and Heather were actually having really good, constructive dialogue, conversation around Jeremy's welfare, and that you felt that was kind of being obstructed or challenged in your words, rubbished, right? To have a normal relationship with the, you know, the evil stepmother, and it seemed maybe quite easy for them to throw scorn over that situation.
Yes, I definitely think that there was a lot of those instances. So we just decided that Jeremy started kind of declining a little bit in certain situations, and we just decided that we weren't going to let this idea or the way things normally are, or the way things that the law says, we weren't going to allow that to control our family anymore. So we actually mediated our own agreement that goes and does week on, week off, that everybody is equal. There's no extra power. We closed every loophole we could come up with. So I actually started following many of the shared parenting community sites for the particular purpose of research, because we wanted to make sure if we were going to spend the money, because it cost us $14,000 combined to fix our paperwork. If we were going to spend the money, we wanted to make sure that we were closed in, we were good. We didn't want to make it be any worse or something come up later. And so through that, then that's how I became so I was the state lead for the Father's Rights Movement here in Texas. And then now I am the director of operations for the entire TFRM organization. And so that's how we kind of started getting involved. We volunteered with Americans for Equal Shared Parenting. Jeremy did speak at and did a video for their Capital for Kids tour in 2019.
Oh, okay.
He started Jeremy Talks Back, the blog, his personal blog, which
yeah. Oh, hold on there. I'm going to come on to that with Jeremy there. You're in danger of stealing his thunder. But, yeah. Okay. So you're really involved parents. So I just want to paint a picture in a, in a nutshell, because for a lot of people, this is kind of dreamland. This is when you have parents who divorce or separate, and there's a child involved, you could be forgiven for thinking that it is an absolute chaotic scenario, one that doesn't really have a happy ending for a lot of people. And you could almost see that within the template of the family court. So what they had in store for you, as you went through as, two sets of parents, they had a template of conflict, not of synergy, with that 50-50 shared parenting. So let me bring in the man of the hour, Jeremy Johnston. So I've been really impressed with you, young man. Standing from afar. You're 17 years old. So that's a good age. Now this, as far as you're aware, has been your life, because your parents split when you were very, very young.
Yeah, I've always been around as I call them, like my two sets of parents. Okay. She's always been in my life, and my stepdad has been there as well for a long time. So not just with 50-50, but just with having two households has always been a thing in my life. So
having that normality of having two parents, I guess that that's got to help. So it's not as if like it's not as if you were sort of 12, 13 years old and then mum and dad split up. I mean, I suppose you could concede and say, like, you might have been a different person then. Obviously you were a baby when this happened. And if you were a 12, 13-year-old young man, hormones flying everywhere, and then your mum and dad split up, you could sort of be pulled into this drama of having parents split up and having all of these emotions around it. But for your case, you grew up thinking nothing different of loving four parents.
Yeah, it's just always been present in my life. And so as you said, it's more of a normality for me.
So at what point were you introduced to this as being something that's quite different, and that's something that's not necessarily just a normal set of circumstances that's available to other families, to the point where you had to go and give your statement to the was it to Congress or local congressional?
It was to a committee at the Texas state legislation.
Yes. Okay, so like a state governing legal, like council type, because I did see the video, and I'm going to put the link, because I think you did very well in your proposal to show people what it is to be the actual person who has to deal with shared parenting, i.e. from the child's point of view. But take us through some of the points that you thought were, that you felt were most important to get across to adults and parents.
Well, so in the testimony, I think that's what you were talking about. I did mention I went against some counter arguments, because a lot of people bring up, when they hear 50-50, for some reason they think of living out of a suitcase, which is a phrase I like to argue against a lot of times. And you always have I don't really know how to say it, but yeah, those counter arguments that I like to go against, especially that living out of a suitcase. And as I said in the testimony, it's more true of the standard possession that we have, because you aren't going and you have places at both households, which makes it even less of a case.
Yeah. I mean, in your, like, to sort of strengthen your argument against the suitcase analogy, even if you spent just one weekend in the month over with another parent, you'd probably still have a set of drawers and your own bed and a load of stuff there anyway, right? You know, I mean, it's not like you're going to be able to, like, you know, pack up every single item that, you know, that shows that you exist in that location for that weekend, and then, you know, clear it all away and take it back with you over your shoulder or what have you. You know, if you were, let's say, to stay at your dad's house, you'd still have stuff there. You'd probably have a pair of trainers. You'd certainly have underpants and a towel at least, and maybe even a toothbrush, right? So there's this argument of a suitcase is, it's a bit farcical.
Yeah, like if you're going on a vacation for not even a week or just for a weekend, you're not gonna, or that's when you're gonna pack a suitcase. But if you're just going to your house, why would you pack something or pack all of that things? Because that's the whole argument with it. If you're going somewhere for a shorter period of time, that's when you would be bringing extra things. And like, even though, like you said, you probably will still have that those amenities, it's going to be less prevalent than if you're there for more of the time.
Yeah, good lad. No, that's exactly. I mean, that's the way I see it. So I know that we haven't, like, you know, we haven't rehearsed anything and all the rest of it, and you're doing very well, and I really appreciate it. And I know it must be very difficult for a 17-year-old boy to speak to an old man, especially with a funny English accent. So I really appreciate it. But I want to ask you about something that might be a little bit more personal around you growing up with your peer group. Did you ever find like friends who have had parents separate and didn't have the same structure that you had and the comfort and the love, and how did you deal with that, and how did you sort of approach those situations where you saw other families maybe breaking up, and what the fallout of that meant for other children?
Well, I mean, with how, I'm going to say it again, prevalent divorces in American households, I definitely see a lot of my peers and a lot of people I know that are in divorced families. Even my best friend, he's from a divorced family, and some of the other people I know very well. And some of them have different arrangements. But so a lot of times, I mean, we don't really talk about it too much. It's because there's no reason to. But a lot of times it'll be, well, yeah, this is what I have. It's pretty good, and I'll sometimes just pitch it for them almost.
Right. As to why it's a good thing to have. So, I mean, maybe 50-50 parenting, maybe there's an argument to suggest that it might not work for everybody, because not everybody fits in the same sort of gap. But would you, I mean, and, you know, please feel free to answer this from both of you. Would you say that you want it more as a starting point for the conversation, or is this something that you want to have sort of rubber stamped as a prerequisite to divorce?
Do you want to answer? Do you want me to?
I think what we're really trying to go for is a starting point, because as it is now, the point that we start with is very one-sided. So when you can make, or when you can start everything off where both parties have that equality, then it's easier to go from there if there are any circumstances that require it to be different. Like I said, yeah, some of my friends have the regular possession, the standard possession, and that works for them because of certain circumstances that they have. But when you have the 50-50 as a starting point, it allows for equality on both sides, and it allows for just better, like, arrangement.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I'm going to disagree with Jeremy on his on some of the aspects of some of the friends he's had since middle school. So he has had friends that in middle school were under the standard possession. And then as they got older and they went into high school, I felt that compared to, so him and his best friend have 50-50, or his best friend has almost 50-50. So they continued on the same path. But one of their good friends that has standard possession, he went on a not good path once they got into high school. So they've lost some friends to more ill-behaved friendships.
Okay.
And
as a result of more of a sort of conflict in the parenting, in the separation.
I would say so. If you look at the stats, so there's all these fatherless generation stats that go along with that. And in looking at these kids that I've seen grow up since middle school, you can definitely see the path. So the Dads Make a Difference flyer from one study, it's got all these great stats about why involved dads are important. Well, the two kids that have either 50-50 or nearly 50-50, they fall in that flyer very clearly in their grades and all the other statistics. And then a couple of the boys who in middle school used to be in the group that fall on the other side of it, they very clearly have fallen victim to some of the not great stats that come from the different fatherless children of father absent homes. So I think that that's a clear defining line there, is whether or not they had close to 50-50 or 50-50 or 25% of the time, because in the state of Texas, our standard possession order, the non-custodial parent only gets 25% of the child's life.
Right. Yeah. Which is going to be a reflection in so many things, as so much research that you alluded to there has shown that, you know, fatherless homes, homes where there's lots of conflict, you know, whether that be, you know, domestic abuse or, you know, drug and alcohol issues, and even high conflict divorce, show the percentages around what actually happens to the children and the sort of paths that they go on. You know, it's a really compelling argument to have a 50-50 basis or starting point, you know, conversation, you know, as a really powerful point to get across. So what's the next step then for you guys? How do you push this forwards for yourselves in Texas?
Well, our bill was effectively what we called killed in committee. It didn't get a vote. It didn't go out to the floor for a big vote. So we have to wait. In Texas, we only have legislative session every 2 years. So for the next 24 months, we will be re-energizing, working on our ground game, talking to more representatives, and be geared up to have another better shared parenting bill next session that we will hopefully get passed. But there's something that I think that a lot of people don't look at, and I'd be remiss if I don't bring it up. Part of the consequences of the standard possession order aren't just about the fathers, and they're not just about the kids. If you look at any of the things that are coming out about women and feminism and women, working women, the unequal custody plans, they really take women and put us back in this 1970s stay-at-home mom box. So we're supposed to be able to go out there and work and do all these things. But the moment we walk into family court, they tell us, no, you're responsible for 75% of the parenting. And if you go ask dad for help, or you let dad have extra time, now you're going to risk going back to court. You're going to risk losing custody. You're going to risk all of these things. We just recently did a video about that, because part of the hearing was we had one woman who lost custody of her child because she was in a master's degree program. We had another woman who testified for the bill, wanting the bill, because as the breadwinner in her family, she was given non-custodial status, which is only 25% of the time. So while we talk about the fact that fathers should be treated equal and kids do better with shared parenting, we also need to talk about the fact that women do better with shared parenting. Wealthy single mom Emma Johnson did her own survey study, and if you go look at her site, and Moms for Shared Parenting, they have a lot of good stats on how impactful that is for women to be able to continue to strive for things outside of their children, to be able to be independent, to take care of themselves. So it's shared parenting is a big, huge ball. Everybody is impacted.
So they put this up in the name of feminism as the guise to sort of sell this back into the courts, but it actually doesn't function for most women who want to be independent and proactive and, you know, embrace the feminist culture of our times.
Right. So the opposition to, and that's an international thing, as far as I know, that opposition to shared parenting, they talk about how it's just father's rights, or and they make that seem like
a way of getting at women through the sort of patriarchy type.
Yeah. And it's just a bunch of angry dads. But the reality of it is that by keeping these laws that were all designed in the 60s, 70s, some of them refreshed maybe in the 80s and 90s, we're really sticking to that old ideology that women should be stay-at-home parents. Mm-hmm. You can watch all sorts of testimony from the session from the main opposition here in Texas, and pretty much their stance is, in my opinion, as a feminist, is women should be in the kitchen. And so it's really strange when you have a organization called the Fathers' Rights Movement that puts me on a megaphone where I can talk about women's rights, and I can talk about the fact that this is not equality for women in court either. Mm-hmm. But the opposition basically wants me to shush it up because I'm talking about talking points they don't want brought up. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. How sad, because ultimately, I mean, you know, one of the things that I want to benchmark here and certainly pedestal is the fact that, you know, the five of you have just done so well for young Jeremy to, you know, to keep him grounded. Obviously, you know, he recently had his prom, and I understand that there was well, you know, why don't you tell us about your prom there, Jeremy? How did that go for you, having two different sets of parents?
Well, I don't think it really made any difference much. I mean, of course, I had all my parents wanting to take pictures. So just
that's annoying.
more pictures. So, but there wasn't much of a big impact, and I was able to treat it like it was just a normal thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose that.
Do you mean against people with nuclear families or people with standard?
Just
well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there in what you said. You said it's normal, so it felt completely normal. So you weren't in a scenario where you felt, oh, this is awkward. You know, I've got to walk around with like, this is my mum and this is my stepdad, and I've got to introduce them in a certain way or what have you. You know, that would be awkward, right? But you felt normal about it, and I think that answers the question quite, you know, yeah, really nicely, because I think that's exactly how everybody around you wants you to feel.
Yeah, because I said, well, I'm sorry, but it's going to be all of my family or all of my parents. But in reality, that was just, like you said, normal. There wasn't a big change if I was in just a regular, like, 2-parent household, or how I have 4-parent. It was just my parents.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you know, that's a wonderful thing for you to have. So with this new 24-month time frame that you've got for yourself for the next bill to be heard, what's the action plan then? How are you going to use that time to campaign, etc.? And how can people get behind it? What should they be looking out for?
So we earlier today we had a meeting with one of the representatives here, who has come out in support of shared parenting. So we're going to work on drafting a new bill. We're going to work on doing some meetings with different people outside of the legislation. There is, of course, the Fathers' Rights Movement. There's the Texas Fathers' Rights Movement, which is just another Facebook page of TFRM. There's Americans for Parental Equality, Texans for Shared Parenting, Equal Justice Task Force, Americans for Equal Shared Parenting, Dad's Equal Custody. We have about 50 shared parenting groups here in Texas, and we try to all work together and message together. We each have our own kind of different viewpoints and our own purpose that we serve in the community. But we do try to stay all connected. And if you follow one or more than one of those pages on social media, then you'll really be in the know on what's going on and what our next steps are. Right now, we're really kind of promoting so Jeremy's turning 18. So part of turning 18 is learning about the political process. So in doing that, we're promoting more of a get involved in your local politics. So it doesn't matter what political party you belong to. You need to start getting more involved there at your local level and then grow from there. Because the more informed you are, the more that you can use your vote and your voice in order to impact legislative changes that you're looking for.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, so with all of those different organizations and groups and what have you, if I could get you to send me some links, I'll put those in the descriptions below this video, and people can have a little shifty through, see what they like, see if they can get involved, etc. But you know, Jeremy, wow, turning 18 and you're going to get real political. How are you looking forward to that?
Well, I mean, if it's anything like what I'm doing now, it shouldn't be too much different.
Yeah, you're gonna nail it. Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sort of steer you off that. You know, I'm trying to be like the bad uncle, you know, who takes you this way a little bit. But you know, if politics float your boat, more power to you. I think you've got a you know, you've got a lot to offer from what you've done and from what you're looking to do. Sorry, I cut you off there. What were you going to say, Jeremy?
I forgot to plug Jeremy Talks Back.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that.
Yeah, well, one of the main things, I mean, we just mentioned, Jeremy Talks Back. It's a Facebook page, and not only does it keep you updated with what a lot of the other organizations are doing, it keeps you updated with what I'm doing and what I think about things, because as a lot of other people have said, I'm the expert because I am a child of 50/50. So I provide my insight and basically give a look into what not just other organizations, but what I'm doing to fight for 50/50.
Well, you know, I think that you'd do really well in this field, and also I think I mean, I don't know if you've considered it before, or if you're, you know, if you would ever want to do it, but I think other young people who are going through matrimonial disputes would really benefit from your story and from the way that you've conducted yourself through this, and the acceptance of, you know, this sort of two parents, four parents, as it were, has been really well, it's been really humbling, actually, because you know, I come from a place where I'm surrounded in high conflict issues. You know, some of the other podcasts that I've done have been you know, really quite horrific stories as to how these things can go south so quickly, and all of a sudden people are out of control, and ultimately the children are the ones that have to bear, you know, all of the fallout from the you know, the viciousness that sometimes people can be towards each other. So, you know, I really think that you've got a lot to offer, and I think that hopefully any young people who are finding you know, conflict with divorce, or need to go somewhere and to listen to some good news about it. You know, I don't think we have enough good news at the moment in regards to these situations, and you bring some good news. And for that, I think, you know, that's just such a great place to be. And thank you for letting me, you know, talk to you about your story. And thanks for coming on here and telling your story so well. I really, really appreciate it. Before we close up, is there anything else you would like to mention? Anything that any shout outs, any things that we might have missed off?
I can't think of anything.
No, I guess I just, maybe we need to thank your dad and your mom for being, putting you first and making sure that your health, whether it be your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health, that was their main focus through all of this. And I think they deserve a lot, maybe not all of it, but a lot of the credit.
Evil stepmom. Yeah. Oh, look, you know, that's so nice of you to say, and it's so refreshing. And if everybody could have just been like you guys and looked at it from the children's point of view, we would have so much more happiness in this world. I truly believe that. I think our society at the moment is being absolutely torn apart by just people trying to hurt each other, you know. And to see you guys all, you know, I'm no sort of, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, you guys are like the Disney of shared parenting. You must have scenarios where everybody kind of like gets on each other's nerves a bit, but that's a family, you know, that's a real family. You do it and then you sort of get over it, and you realize what's important, that, you know, actually you all love each other and you're all connected in a really, really nice way. So, you know, it doesn't always have to be sort of roses and what have you, but
yeah, definitely. No. And like, so I kind of feel, and I think that everybody can agree with this, is it's more like your cousins, you know, like you couldn't say something bad about your cousin to your sibling, but nobody else better say something. So like, we can in each household, if we want to complain to our spouse about something the other household has done, that's perfectly fine. But no one else better complain about the other household. Yeah. You know, his mom and his stepdad have a really good relationship with my mom. Mm-hmm. You know, with it's just, I think my mom is grandma to everybody. So it's really strange. And I get that. And we get a lot of comments about us being unicorns and rainbows and all of this kind of stuff, but it's really not that hard. And that's the thing that I think people don't understand. It's not that difficult. You simply and totally focus on your kid.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think it would be really ridiculous for people to think that, are these guys just trying to be like perfect family or what have you? I don't think you're even sort of like showing that, but it's really hard when you're sort of saying, look, you know, we want to be an advert for 50-50 parenting. People will always try and pick little holes and, you know, try and fray the edges a little bit, look for some sort of, you know, look for some sort of chink in the armor. But you know, good for you for just being honest that, you know, like, we're just normal. You know, I think normal is going to be the word of this podcast. And you gave us that. I said it
in 2019 at another event at the Capitol, is no, contrary to what our parents may try to tell people, there's absolutely nothing special about the four of us. Yeah, nothing. Right. We are just two women and two men, two of which used to be married and have a kid. And we just figured it out because it was silly and it was draining and it was hurting Jeremy when we let the pressure from the standards and the other people get to us and cause conflict.
Ah, good. Well, look, I think now that's a great place to close off the podcast. But thank you so much. I really mean it. You know, I can't wait to put this one up there. And I'll even send you a link of it as well, Jeremy. You might want to include it on your ever expanding Facebook page there. So I'll encourage people to go and check out Jeremy Talks Back on Facebook. And thank you once again for coming on. I genuinely mean it. When I saw your videos, that I was actually really inspired to see what you're doing at such a young age.
Well, thank you for having us, and yeah, I'm glad to talk about all of this anytime, because it's truly just a great thing.
Do keep in touch on the progress. I want to see it in 2024, 2023, some really good outcomes. I'm sure you can do it.
We're hoping. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
On a train, in a bus, in a car, on the way to your job. All alone with your kids, with your wife, or with your dog. You can listen anywhere, you can listen everywhere. To the Philip Maloney podcast.